Yo guys, it's your boy Dylan, and today we're going to be predicting week 15 of the 2024-25 NFL season. Now with this week for now on through week 18, all 32 teams will be playing as we are done with the bye weeks for the year. And then before we go any deeper, we're also going to be doing the traditional 3 teams that are on the bright side, while the 3 teams that are not on the bright side by going downhill really fast, or even naming out a couple teams that are eliminated. So going on with our first game for Thursday Night Football for tonight's game, we have the Rams versus the 49ers. Both teams trying to keep their season alive, as the 49ers, they did get a win over the Bears, over the declining Bears. As the Rams, they're keeping it alive. They've won 2 in a row, and for the first time this year. And after that 44-42 in Rams' favor in that game, they're battling to stay alive. And you know what they say, it ain't over till it's over. So with this game, give me the Rams for week 15. Moving on to the Commanders versus Saints. Now the Commanders are one of the first teams this week to come off of the bye of last week's bye, of the final bye week. As the Commanders, they're solid at the moment. They're an 8-5 team. I'm trying to get deeper in that wild card, as to where the Saints, they narrowly pulled it off against against a lopsided Giants team that can't even figure out how to win without Daniel Jones, with or without Daniel Jones per se. But I'm gonna go with the Commanders in this week. So give me the Commanders. All right, for the next game, we have the Cardiac Chiefs taking on the Cleveland Browns. Now, I did call them, and yes, you heard me right. I did call the Chiefs the Cardiac Chiefs. They're actually the Kansas City Chiefs. But almost every week, it has to come down to the final play to give the Chiefs a heart attack. They are literally the luckiest 12-1 team that's on right now. Because if you don't know, on this episode of the Cardiac Chiefs last week, their third-string kicker, kicking the field goal, and doinked off of the pole in where you should get for a field goal, and the Chiefs got the field goal to clinch the AFC West division for a 9th straight year. So, another heart attack by Chiefs fans. But they do play against the Browns. Hopefully, I would like to see a game where hopefully it doesn't end up as a heart attack. Give me the Chiefs over the Browns. Now, the Browns are one of the newer teams that just got eliminated last week from playoff contention. So, goodbye, Browns. Moving on to the Bengals and Titans. The Titans, I believe, are the other team that got eliminated from contention. It could have been another team, who knows, this past week. But the Bengals, they did keep their season alive by beating the Cowboys back in week 14 in a 27-20 duel, in an intense fourth quarter, actually. But the Titans, we all know how they play. They're not that good. They're one of those disjointed teams. So with that, I have the Bengals to keep their season alive even further, and they're gonna improve to a 6-8 record. At this point, the Bengals have to win out. They basically have to win out if they want to even have a shot at playoff football. Moving on to the Dolphins versus Texans. The Dolphins, they kept their season alive last week by beating the Jets in overtime, a 32-26 win over the New York Jets, a lopsided Jets team. Both New York teams actually suck. I mean, I could get to that here in a moment. But the Texans, I believe they were also on bye as well. So the Texans, they're coming off of the bye, and they're 8-5. And I believe in this week, I believe they have a chance to wrap up the AFC South division. And this could be one of the games to start with it. So I have the Texans beating the Dolphins to getting one step closer, or maybe even clinching the AFC South. Moving on to the Ravens versus Giants. Again, we all know how the Giants play. They're tied with the Raiders for the worst record in the league overall, 2-11. As for the Ravens, they've been back and forth, but they are 8-5 as well. So the Ravens, I mean, they're good, but they're not like perfect or great. But I think they're more good. But knowing how the Giants play, this is going to be an easy win. An easy win, clinching a winning season for the Ravens in Week 15. Moving on to the other lopsided New York team, a team that just got eliminated this past week. The New York Jets taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Ladies and gentlemen, into this week's episode of Toilet Bowl of the Week, we have the Jets and Jaguars. I do think the Jets will have the upper hand here. Both teams are 3-10, but I think the Jets have a bit of the upper hand. Someone has to get their fourth win, and I think the Jets are going to do it. The Jaguars, they just look clueless. Things are not looking bright in Jacksonville again. Moving on to the Cowboys and Panthers. The Cowboys, another loss that will potentially hurt them on their playoff chances, as they did lose to the Bengals back last week. As to where the Panthers, they could have had a chance to beat or at least send it to overtime against the Eagles, but that did not come to fruition. And the funny thing is with the Panthers, if you look at the standings and scenarios, they actually have a chance to still clinch the division, apparently. So apparently they're not out yet, but if you take my words here, I'm calling them eliminated already, because how they play is just dysfunctional. But I do have and with this, I have the Cowboys beating the Panthers. The funniest thing is, if the Panthers do beat the Cowboys, and if the Cowboys really suck that bad, I will laugh. You will hear me have the loudest laugh next week. But in all seriousness, I have the Cowboys beating them. But if the Panthers somehow beat them, then the Cowboys are like the biggest joke in the NFL. Moving on to the Buccaneers versus Chargers. The Buccaneers, they are now back in first place in the NFC South, as they did beat, I believe they beat some other team. I can't figure out who, but they did win last week to improve. As to the Chargers, again, against the Cardiac Chiefs, they unfortunately lost to the Chiefs, but it's okay. They're still in the wild card. If the season ends today, they're still in the wild card. I do think this will be a rebound week, though, for the Chargers, and the Chargers will improve to a 9-5 record, and they will take the win here against the Buccaneers. Moving on to the Patriots and Cardinals. Cardinals, they are on a losing skid again, so that's what happens. As for the Patriots, same old Patriots. I believe they were on bye week this past week, but the Patriots, things didn't look bright in the land. So I do have the Cardinals winning that game. And I did actually skip a game, which I'm going to get to right now, which is the Colts and Broncos. Colts and Broncos, both teams were on bye this past week, and now both teams get to square off against one another. The Broncos, they are riding on a winning streak. That is one thing you got to note. And the Colts, their season's technically not over yet as well. They're 6-7, and they're still in the hunt for the playoffs. But I will say this, in the AFC, that gap is closing really quickly. Like, we saw 3 teams get eliminated 2 weeks ago, and 3 more teams get eliminated last week. So that's one thing I do want to know when it comes to the playoff picture. But I do have the Broncos, picking up where they left off from prior to the bye week, and I do have the Broncos beating the Colts, clinching their first winning season since 2016. All right, now we're going to go forward by a couple games. We're going to go to Bills and Lions. This is the game of the week. Between this and the next game coming up that I'm going to talk about, this is literally the game of the week. The Bills, they could have beaten the Rams in a 44-42 shootout, but they just came 2 points short of tying 3 from winning the game. If they would have had a deep drive for a game-winning field goal, then the Bills, they would have been even further. As to where the Lions did clinch that playoff spot this past week in week 14. So gotta give it to the Lions. They are now in the playoffs, and they've matched their last year's win total too. So the Lions, they're looking like a whole new team than like 2 or 3 years ago. I think this is gonna be another shootout that involves the Bills in it, but the Bills might lose 2 in a row. I'm gonna go with the Lions with the edge here, and I'm saying the Bills, they may need to lose one more. Who knows? Moving on to the Steelers and Eagles. Both the Steelers and Eagles, they are doing really good right now. The Steelers, they are just finding ways to win with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson looks good again, apparently. As to where the Eagles, the Eagles, on the other hand, they're just rolling. And with them rolling, the Eagles are also in the playoffs in the NFC. So we're starting to see some NFC teams now make the playoffs. But I'm going to go a little bit bold here. I'm going to go with the Steelers for Week 15. I think sometimes a winning streak needs to come to an end at some point. And that's why I'm saying the Steelers are going to snap that winning streak for the Eagles. So, there you have it. Moving on to the Packers and Seahawks. The Seahawks, they're staying alive in that race. I wouldn't say they're staying alive, but they are in first place. They've won 4 in a row. For them to now have that first place lead in the NFC West. As for the Packers, they did take a tough loss to the Lions, but I do think this week will be a rebound week, and they will get their 10th win against the Seahawks, making the Seahawks fall a little bit. Moving on to the Bears-Vikings. What else do I gotta say about the Bears? That they were looking good at one point, but as the season progressed, they're losing games now, unfortunately, sadly. As for the Vikings, this is a game where they could potentially clinch the playoffs. I got the Vikings taking home a win for Week 15. And last but not least, I got the Falcons and the Raiders. Raiders, they're just disorganized. I would not be surprised if it's between the Raiders and the Giants that they're the worst team. I would not be surprised if the Raiders take the cake as the worst team. The worst they can literally be is 2-15. So I have the Falcons taking home the win. But here is one thing I do want to note, though. Since I do have the Buccaneers losing this week, that means the Falcons can, and now that I have the Falcons winning this week, that means the Falcons can retake first place, or at least be tied again for first place. Now, for 3 teams that are improving and 3 teams that are declining, we're going to start with the improving things. Rams. I got the Rams in the number 3 slot just because they've been winning games again, and for the first time this year, they are above 500. They went from a 5-6 record at one point to now a 7-6 record. So things have been getting better in LA for the Rams. And, like I said, it ain't over till it's over. And since I have them winning, that can make them improve to an 8-6 record. So, like I keep saying, it ain't over till it's over. Next, I have the Vikings. The Vikings, they are on their new season's longest winning streak. They've won 6 in a row. They did, I wouldn't say it's a shootout, but they did beat the Falcons big, 42-21. And with that, they're on a 6-game winning streak, and they're 11-2. So, gotta give it to them. At this point, I gotta give it to them. Even though they're not in the playoffs, I might as well just call them a playoff team, no matter what happens. And I do have the Vikings winning, so no matter what happens, they'll probably get the play. They could have had a chance to clinch this week, but a few scenarios did ruin the Vikings' chances. But hey, 11-2, 11-2, whatever record there is, 11-3 is not bad, in my opinion. It's really good for the Vikings. This season has been a big improvement from last year's 7-10. Moving on to the number 1 team. Honestly, this is actually a debatable one. The Seahawks. The Seahawks, they have won 4 in a row. They were 4-5 earlier this year, but they've won 4 in a row. They've doubled that win total since they were originally 4-5. And now that they're 8-5, they have the first place lead in the NFC West. And hopefully, if they can continue maintaining that, maybe they could win the division. And, maybe Geno Smith is really that guy for the Seahawks. We'll just have to see how that goes. It's everyone's game in that division, really, right now. So, it's not like someone's eliminated. Declining. Ooh. For third place, I have the Raiders. Honestly, the Raiders should be higher. Maybe even higher than... If I really wanted to spoil it, I could. But the Raiders are just dysfunctional. One more loss. Literally one more loss. And it's 10 in a row. 2-12. They're not 2-12 now, but expect it to happen. And if I was to check their schedule right now, the Raiders are just disorganized. This is even worse. Like I keep saying, I expected a lot better out of them, but not this result. This has just been disastrous. They can win 4 in a row and somehow be a 6-11 team, but it's just been disastrous there in the Sin City. Moving on to what could be the real third place team, but I have them at second since they took another loss, is the Dallas Cowboys. One more loss and it's a losing season for the Cowboys, so they're going to have to win now. They're going to have to start winning. Even if they want to get into the playoff, if they want to get deeper into the playoff race, they're going to have to start winning. I mean, the gap is wide open apparently still for the NFC. And the reason why the Panthers are still in the race, even though they're definitely out, in my opinion, is because they can still win the division. That's why they're technically not eliminated yet, but I think they're definitely eliminated, but, you know, they just don't want to admit it. But going back to the Cowboys, you know, a loss like that will hurt you. A loss like that will hurt you. Like I said, one more loss and it's a losing season in Dallas. And then number one, well, another year, another season where they missed the playoffs. And that is the New York Jets. They've already matched their loss total from the previous 2 seasons. And one more loss will make them have their worst season since 2020. The Jets are just completely disorganized. They are destroyed. The Aaron Rodgers experiment completely failed. And that's all I really have for the Jets. The Jets, I mean, if you really think about it, both New York teams combined with their losses, both New York teams combined for 21 losses if you do the math. Because you have a 3-10 Jets team and a 2-11 Giants team. Both New York teams really suck this year. Oh my goodness. New York, you deserve a lot better. Oh my God. I'm just speechless on what's going down in New York right now. Or up there in New York or wherever. So with that, that'll do it for today's video. If you guys want to see more content like this, smash the subscribe button. Smash the like button. Comment if you want to see something else. Smash the subscribe button as we're inching closer to 1,000 subscribers. Until then, I will see you guys in the next video.